I'm Sara Jones, the Executive Director of the Great North Innocence Project. Welcome to our 2021 Benefit for Innocence. This past year, we've had some successes on both parts of our mission. This year is really special. We're celebrating our anniversary, 20 years since our founding. Tonight, you'll hear about some of our accomplishments this year. You'll hear from a founding board member and our legal director, who's been with us for 18 years, talking about the history of our organization. A.L. Brown, another long-serving board member, will give you his thoughts on why he's been so devoted to the Great North Innocence Project all these years, and will inspire you to donate, because this is our annual fundraising event. In addition, we're really excited that we have Barry Scheck, a founder of the Innocence Project in New York. Barry will share his reflections on the innocence movement over the years since the Innocence Project's 1989 founding. I want to welcome you to our 2021 Benefit for Innocence, celebrating our 20th anniversary.
I'm Ed Magarian. I am a lawyer at Dorsey & Whitney, a partner in the trial department. I started with the Innocence Project back in 2001, right when it was getting formed, and was on the first board of directors.
I'm Julie Jonas. I'm the legal director with the Great North Innocence Project. I've been with the Great North Innocence Project since 2003, but I have been involved with the organization ever since it began. I've actually been to every single benefit they've had.
I've watched a organization go from a shoestring budget. I don't think we had more than, at most, $50,000, and that was after our first benefit, to an organization that is self-sustaining, has broad public support, because we have a very, very important mission. And that's to identify individuals who have been convicted of crimes that they didn't commit and free them, and make systematic changes in the way that we live, the way we identify individuals who we believe may be convicted of crimes, to make sure that it doesn't happen again.
When I first started, there was an executive director in place, Erica Applebaum, and she was the first person I got to work with, and poor Erica had to share her office with me. That is how small the organization was. We started at Hamline University, and they were kind enough to give us office space in a converted house. So we had one bedroom in that house that had 2 desks in it, and that's where I started. Erica had one desk on one side of the room, I had my desk on the other. I had a big stack of files, and she pretty much said, go find someone who's innocent.
You know, ultimately, my interest in the criminal side of this probably stemmed more from something that happened in my personal life. Back in 1986, I was in the summer between college and law school. I was walking home after dropping my then girlfriend off at her place, and it was about 2 a.m. in Washington, D.C. And as I was walking home, a group of guys came up to me. I was in shorts, I had a Timex watch on, and they took my watch, and then they had a lead pipe that they proceeded to bash my head in. They left me. I ended up coming to at some point, and then the next thing I remember, I was in the hospital. This was the year of 500 murders in Washington, D.C. And they were trying to figure out if they could find out who had actually done this. And they would bring to me pictures of people, including pictures of students, because the people that had attacked me that night appeared to be sort of that age, maybe a little bit older. Well, I looked through a whole bunch of pictures and the like, and ultimately one day, shortly after looking at these pictures, I am walking through campus and I see somebody who I immediately recognize. And in my head, I went to, this was somebody that was there that night. And I honestly 100% believed that to be true. And I fingered that person as one of the folks. He ultimately denied it. And as I learned more about false identifications and how often that happens and how it happens, including showing people pictures and show-ups as opposed to the double-blind sequential method, it finally made me realize that I didn't know for sure if I had actually remembered the person that I saw that night who took the lead pipe to my head, or I was remembering the picture that the police showed to me of somebody who could be the person that did it that night. And that's something to this day that haunts me because I don't know. That to me, given the fact how often that happens, is a really important reasons why the Innocence Project's mission is so important, because so many people get convicted of crimes that they didn't commit because the witnesses, the eyewitnesses, 100% believe that the person that they have identified committed the crime. And in many of those cases, they're just wrong. And I may have been wrong.
I think the work of Innocence Projects is so important because there are people in prison who are actually innocent. We know it. The calculations are somewhere between 3 and 5% of the people who are in prison are actually innocent. And honestly, I can't think of anything worse than to be in prison for a crime you didn't commit.
I think one of the ones that touched me the most was Mike. I have 2 kids. I can't imagine having somebody claim that I murdered one of my children and then be convicted of that and spend years in jail for that. And based upon basically lies. So for him to watch him be exonerated as a dad meant a lot to me.
Well, the most exciting times with the organizations really are when our clients get out of prison. Those days when you get to be at the prison door and they walk out into the arms of their family, and you just see the sheer joy on their face of getting out and those first moments they have. One of our clients, Terry Olson, when he came out, I remember him taking off his shoes and walking in the grass. I said, "Terry, what are you doing?" And he had not been barefoot in the grass in almost 12 years. I mean, that just to share that moment with somebody is so incredible. When Javon got out and we got to bring him home and he was reunited with his children, and to see the excitement on those children's faces that they could climb all over their daddy again, those are moments you just never forget.
It's that rush when you are dealing with a case and you go, oh my God, it's not just somebody's claiming that they didn't do it, but we can actually show that they didn't do it and that they should be exonerated. And that sort of eureka moment to me is a very exciting moment. And working with people like Julie Jonas and others at the project on these cases, because I did work on several of them. And it's the people, it's the process, it's the inmates that are in jail for things that they didn't do. When we finally realize that they really are innocent, it just lights a fire under you to try to do what you can to exonerate them.
My proudest moment is actually probably different from what most people will think. I've loved getting all of our clients out of prison. That's incredible. But my proudest moment was doing something different, and that was when I got to be up at the legislature and work on the first law that we passed, which was the compensation statute, so that our exonerees would get some money when they were released from prison. And it was so incredible to be up there with Mike and Kua and be with them while they told their story to the different legislators. And then the legislators apologized to them. And it was just incredible, because Mike said to me afterwards, no one has apologized to me for what happened to me. And to see legislators coming up to him and Kua with tears in their eyes after their testimony and thanking them and apologizing was really something that what made me so proud to be doing what we're doing.
Did I ever think we would get to this point from where we started? I guess the answer to that is yes. I didn't know how long it would take. I just felt so strongly about the mission that I really believed that the community would never allow that mission to die. It's there for the grace of God go any of us in terms of being wrongfully convicted, being accused of things that we didn't do. It happens in everyday life, putting aside convictions. And just imagine, how people feel if they're wrongfully accused of something in everyday life, and then to compound that by, actually being tried and convicted for something that they actually didn't do. I just think that that's something that resonates with the community. It is not a partisan issue. It is a Republican, it is a Democrat, it is an independent, it is a libertarian issue. And it's something that I don't think our community would allow to die.
I'm so excited to be here today on the 20th anniversary of this organization. It's just been amazing to be there from the ground floor and watch how this organization has grown, both in staff members and accomplishments, both with individual clients and at the legislature. It's just been really an incredible thing to watch and to be a part of.
It is hard to imagine that we have gone 20 years since the founding of the Innocence Project, and the number of lives that the project has touched, not just the people who have been exonerated, but I firmly believe that if it weren't for the Innocence Project, there would have been people who would have been wrongfully identified and prosecuted and probably convicted if it weren't for the work over the last 20 years. I mean, there are communities now that have changed the way that they do eyewitness identification. That issue was pushed by this project. If it had not been pushed by this project, just like the pictures that get shown to me, you're going to have more people who are fingered as doing criminal acts when they actually didn't do it. So the fact that we've got 20 years of behind us just makes me excited about the 20 years to come.
Hi, my name is A.L. Brown, and I've been a board member with the Great North Innocence Project for the better part of a decade. And I could not find a better organization to dedicate my time and treasure. I give because I care about those whom other people have forgotten, those who have been imprisoned and imprisoned wrongfully because their convictions were not in accordance with the law and because they're innocent. Imagine that. Being behind bars in a small cell for a crime you did not commit. This work is vital. It's vital to the criminal justice system, and it's vital to humanity. We need your help. Not going to be shy about it. Dig in your pockets, dig deep, and give, because we need the help. So thank you. Thank you for 20 years of giving and support. We could not have done this work without you. Your giving is directly responsible for changing the lives and changing the judicial system here in the state of Minnesota for the better. You have very much to be proud of, and we are very proud to have you as a donor. But we need you to give again. Give again tonight, give big, give 20 years worth of hope that we give to so many people who are imprisoned who believe that they've been wrongfully incarcerated. We thank you so much for joining us tonight and hope you enjoy your time.
Thank you to everyone who's donated so far. And remember, you can continue to donate throughout the program and afterward. I want to remind you of the importance of our mission. Our mission has two parts. We work to free wrongfully convicted people, and we do that through court proceedings. And we work to prevent wrongful convictions from happening in the future through policy work and education. The second part of our mission is to prevent wrongful convictions from happening in the future. One of the ways we do this is through our policy work. And this year we had another success at the Minnesota legislature. This year, we looked at the ways jailhouse informants are used by prosecutors and disclosed to defense attorneys. Jailhouse informants are people who are behind bars, and they offer to testify against an accused person in another crime, and they expect to get a deal from the prosecutors of leniency in their own case, perhaps, for their testimony. These witnesses are inherently unreliable because they're incentivized to lie by getting deals in their own cases. Sometimes jailhouse informants testify in multiple cases over time. But we wanted a way for prosecutors to find an easier method for understanding the background of these jailhouse informants that they might use as witnesses, and for disclosing that to defense counsel and the courts to improve reliability of evidence. So with a bipartisan coalition, we got a new bill passed at the Minnesota legislature that requires prosecutors to look into the past of these jailhouse informants who might testify in a case, disclose that information proactively to the defense counsel, including any implicit or explicit deal the jailhouse informant might be getting, and to track their use of jailhouse informants so that over time, the state of Minnesota, through the Department of Corrections, create a database of history of jailhouse informants. All of this makes their testimony much more likely to be credible if they actually do testify in court. In addition, one very important aspect of this legislation is that victims of jailhouse informants' crimes also have to be informed that the jailhouse informant might be getting a deal in their own case. We think that notifying victims of this potential is very important for their safety and well-being. I want to thank Democratic Representative Jamie Long, who was the chief author in the House, and Republican Senator Bill Ingebrigtsen, who was the chief author in the Senate. This bipartisan group came together and made an improvement to the criminal justice system. We're proud to have worked with the Innocence Project in New York and their policy team to make this happen. And we also had backing from the ACLU of Minnesota and Americans for Prosperity for Minnesota. So as you can see, we brought together a very diverse and bipartisan coalition to make this happen. In 2019, we began conversations with Minnesota's Attorney General Keith Ellison, Hennepin County Attorney Mike Freeman, and Ramsey County Attorney John Choi about the possibility of establishing a conviction review unit in Minnesota. Conviction review units, or conviction integrity units, are in prosecutors' offices, and prosecutors cooperatively look back at their own cases and evaluate whether or not a mistake was made and a wrongful conviction happened. Around the country, most of these conviction review units are within county prosecutors' offices. We proposed that we establish a statewide conviction review unit through the Attorney General's office with funding from the Department of Justice. The Great North Innocence Project applied for a federal grant and received the funding, and we began our work in late 2020 to establish the Conviction Review Unit in the Attorney General's office. So far, we've pulled together an amazing group of advisory board members with expertise in criminal law, from prosecutors around the state, public defenders, defense attorneys, victims' rights advocates, law enforcement, and people from various diverse communities around the state. This advisory board helped us pull together a governing charter for the Conviction Review Unit and went through the process of hiring a nationally renowned director for the Conviction Review Unit. Carrie Sperling, the Conviction Review Unit's first director, is nationally known for her expertise in wrongful convictions, program building, and academia. Carrie started work in April of 2021, and we've worked together to establish the procedures for the Conviction Review Unit. And finally, in August of this year, the Conviction Review Unit started taking applications from people with claims of wrongful convictions. We're excited to see how that work continues over the years to come, and we'll work as a member of the advisory board to assure that this groundbreaking program has the funding it needs to continue. I want to thank Attorney General Ellison, County Attorney Mike Freeman, and County Attorney John Choi for their forward-thinking support in partnering with us to make this happen. And I want to thank all of the advisory board members for their work in providing guidance and leadership. And now it's my pleasure to introduce Barry Scheck. Barry has had an illustrious career as a criminal defense attorney, and in 1989, he co-founded the Innocence Project with Peter Neufeld in New York.
Tonight, our theme is The Fight Continues. It's been 30 years since Peter Neufeld and I were able to found the Innocence Project at the Benjamin N. Cardozo School of Law as a clinical program. It has been 20 years since the Great North Innocence Project, previously known as the Minnesota Innocence Project, first began. Next year will be the 20th anniversary of the Innocence Network itself. 63 organizations now in the United States and 13 abroad. This movement has become an international human rights movement where we've involved just about everyone you can think of is stakeholders in the criminal legal system to get behind the cause of exonerating the innocent, apprehending those who really committed the crimes, and in a systematic fashion, trying to come to terms with why it all happened in the first place. I can't help but think of the late Jim Dwyer, someone who won 3 Pulitzer Prizes, and Peter Neufeld and I were lucky enough in the year 2000, 21 years ago, to write a book called Actual Innocence. And I just want to quote from the beginning of our book to give you a sense of where we started from, where we are now, and why the fight should continue. We said, and this is in 2000, a rare moment of enlightenment is at hand. For generations, American lawyers and crusaders have fought to overturn the convictions of people they believed innocent. Until recently, they had to rely on witnesses to recant or for the real perpetrators to confess. In what seems like a flash, DNA tests performed during the last decade of the century have exposed a system of law that has been far too complacent about its fairness and accuracy. What matters most is not how these people got out of jail, but how they got into it. Now the fabric of false guilt is laid bare, and the same vivid threads that bind a wealthy Oklahoma businessman and a Maryland fisherman. Sometimes eyewitnesses make mistakes, snitches lie, confessions are coerced or fabricated, racism trumps the truth, lab tests are rigged, defense lawyers sleep, prosecutors lie. DNA testing is to justice what the telescope is for the stars. Not a lesson in biochemistry, not a display of the wonders of magnifying optical glass, but a way to see things as they really are. It is a revelation machine, and the evidence that says that most likely thousands of innocent people are in prison beyond the reach of the revelation machine, just as there are more stars beyond the sight of the most powerful telescope. And that's why the fight must continue, because the truth is we began with DNA testing, the gold standard of forensic disciplines. But we now see that so many other disciplines in the criminal legal space need more foundational and as applied validity in terms of the science. And so the innocence movement is working with the federal government, with crime labs all across the country, with lawyers in the trenches to make it more reliable in the first place. Everybody should celebrate when an innocent person is exonerated, as sad and as happy as we are on those occasions. And everybody should recognize that every time the innocent are convicted, the person who really committed the crime is free and often commits more. But we all have to focus on how to improve the system. So let me thank the Great North Innocence Project, for example, for leading the charge now in the legislature of the state of Minnesota, trying to do something about jailhouse informant testimony, and for its past efforts in dealing with eyewitness misidentification, false confessions, and other problems that plague this system. But the fight must continue. We've got to do these things in South Dakota and North Dakota. We have got to work with all of our allies to reform the system in a profound way. Now, one of the things that the Great North Innocence Project has done now is something that we call conviction integrity work. Specifically, the Great North Innocence Project is partnering with the Attorney General's office, Attorney General Keith Ellison, who's been wonderfully welcoming of this effort, to set up a conviction review unit. And we have the cooperation of Mike Freeman, the Hennepin County District Attorney, John Choi, the District Attorney in St. Paul, and hopefully others across the state. We have Carrie Sperling, who is one of the executive directors of the Wisconsin Innocence Project, leading this. And we have involvement from all the law schools in the state of Minnesota. And this is an effort where cooperatively prosecutors, law enforcement, defense lawyers can come together and try to figure out whether somebody should be exonerated, somebody should be apprehended as actually having committed the crime, and to study in a very systematic way what other kinds of reforms we can use to fix the criminal legal system. So the fight continues. And how can you help? How can everyone help? Well, you need money to make innocence organizations work. So let me encourage everyone right now that sees this tape, that's part of this virtual gala, please donate. Help the Great North Innocence Project find the innocent in the state of Minnesota, in the state of South Dakota, and the state of North Dakota. This is really critical because it's the exonerations, it's the individuals that really help power this movement. I would be remiss if I did not acknowledge that it was lawyers in Minnesota, Steve Kaplan, and a staff attorney now at the Great North Innocence Project, James Mayer, who were then part of the Frederickson firm, spent 10 years working with the Innocence Project and capital lawyers in Louisiana to exonerate a man named Damon Thibodeau. And Damon Thibodeau was convicted of committing a murder of his cousin. It was a false confession that was coerced. It took 10 years of working cooperatively with the Jefferson Parish District Attorney, Paul Connick, his investigators that we hired, spending hundreds of thousands of dollars, frankly, on all kinds of tests to re-examine this conviction. And when finally the district attorney agreed with all of us that Damon was an innocent man, Paul Connick waived a procedural bar and allowed Damon to walk out from death row. And I raise that because where did Damon go after he left death row? He actually came to Minneapolis, and he spent time at the Minnesota Innocence Project, at the Frederickson firm, with all his friends in Minnesota that helped exonerate him. And I've got to acknowledge that because there has been a tradition of the private bar in Minnesota doing pro bono work, not just in Minnesota, but all across the country. And of course, Steve Kaplan was a member of the board of the Minnesota Innocence Project for a long time, and James is still working there. I mention this because Damon tragically died of COVID 2 months ago, but he did so much in his time after he was exonerated for his family and for so many of us in the innocence movement with his resilience, his upbeat personality, and his inspiration. And when I spoke to his brother right after Damon died, one of the first things he talked about is how Damon's re-entry into civil society was greatly assisted by all the experiences he had in Minnesota, working with all of you. So thank you for that. So why does the fight need to continue? It needs to continue because the innocence movement is one of those efforts in our country and frankly across the world where we can get beyond polarization. We can get beyond political differences trumping science, where we can actually try in a systematic scientific way to figure out how the innocent people were convicted in the first place and what we can do to prevent it from happening again. And our movement is extremely active on a federal level, passing legislation like the Justice for All Act, which is going to be reauthorized and is going to, I think, have some very important legislative action in the area of conviction integrity with a partnership between Senator Klobuchar and John Cornyn of Texas. Those are the kinds of partnerships and relationships across political lines can make a huge difference. And that fight must continue. It must continue because, as we noted in that passage I read you from Actual Innocence, there are so many people in prison who did not commit the crimes. And we do not have DNA tests that can just reveal this, but we have other methods of evaluating cases in the criminal legal system that can demonstrate all of those who are innocent if we try harder and work more in a more sophisticated, cooperative way. So what you are all doing with the Conviction Review Unit is an extremely important initiative. There are over 90 conviction integrity units in the United States. I'm not saying all of them are effective at this point or are doing things by best practices. They're not. But the CRU in your state is. And the way that all the law schools and everybody is getting together with the Attorney General's office to move that effort forward is going to make a big difference. Already, I know that best practices are coming out of your CRU, which we can apply to other states across the country. So thank you for that. And why else must the fight continue? Because this country, more than ever before, is coming to terms with its own history. And we know that the problem of race is an original sin, and it really affects outcomes in the criminal justice system in ways that none of us want. And it's going to take people of goodwill, people that can cross over those political lines, people in the best traditions of what you have been able to accomplish in Minnesota to come together and get this done. Nobody has to tell anyone in Minnesota what these problems are. You have lived with them in a way that no other state in our country in the past year has. But this is a moment to pull together, continue this fight around issues that everybody can embrace. Good science, protect the innocent, identify those who really committed the crimes, pursue legislation that are win-wins, that help us improve this system. And I think that this celebration of the 20th anniversary of the Minnesota Great North Innocence Project will be another one of those landmarks that we look back on 20 years from now and celebrate as a great effort, as a real step forward in an international civil rights movement. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Barry. It was really exciting to hear your perspectives on the innocence movement over the years. I want to be sure to thank Ed Magarian, one of the founding board members of the Innocence Project of Minnesota, for sharing his reflections. And my sincere thanks to Jennifer Kramer and everyone else involved in starting the Innocence Project of Minnesota and working through to our current status as the Great North Innocence Project. There have been a lot of staff members and board members over the years who've made possible where we are today. And I want to thank our sponsors and all of you who've donated to make the last 20 years possible for us, and everyone who's donating tonight to make the next 20 years possible. Thank you again for your time and attention and for the help you provide for innocent people.